Hi everyone, let's talk about grief and trauma. Grief and trauma is a part and parcel of everybody's life. It could come from losing someone you love tragically, by being betrayed by the person you trusted a lot, by a divorce, by accident, miscarriage, abandonment, failure, past trauma, childhood trauma, loneliness, humiliation, job loss, and the list goes on. Nobody who has lived in this world can escape grief and trauma. It's a part and parcel of everybody's life. For some, the grief and trauma would be more, for others, the grief and trauma would be less. If I have to go further, I can say that for some, the ability to handle grief and trauma will be easier, but for others, they have lesser ability to handle grief and trauma. Let's talk about how most people handle trauma and how we should be handling trauma in the long run to have a healthy emotional and psychological life and balance. So, how do most people deal with grief or trauma? Most people don't want to think about it. They suppress it, they disconnect from it, and they want to keep going, moving forward with life. It's not a bad idea in temporarily, if especially if your trauma is very large or if your grief is very large, to put it behind and keep going on with life. It's a survival mechanism. Nobody wants to think about a grief or a trauma that stops them from moving ahead in life. So most people, what they do is they put it behind, they suppress it, they disconnect from the trauma and keep going. What do some others do? They keep thinking about it all the time and they get angry. Why should this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? How can this person do this to me? How can this person betray me? How did the person I trust so much leave me and go? How did my spouse do this to me? And how many times should I keep going through this? Some people think about it all the time, get angry, and they get depressed. So, there are two ways in which people usually deal with grief or trauma. Either they completely disconnect from it or they keep dwelling on it all the time. What happens when you suppress grief or trauma? In the short run, it's not a bad idea to suppress grief or trauma to go forward with your life. Many a times, grief and trauma become so huge at a stumbling block that we will have to push it back and keep going on with life. But what happens when you continuously suppress grief and trauma and do not deal with it? It becomes a part of your subconscious mind. You think you have gone forward and you have dealt with the grief and trauma, but it becomes a part of your subconscious mind and it emerges in ways that you will not understand. For example, you will have a feeling of nervousness, unconscious anxiety, or a sense of sadness and impending gloom, or feelings that you're not aware of. It re-emerges in ways that you're not aware of because your subconscious is trying to deal with the grief and trauma that you suppress and disconnected from. So when you disconnect from grief and trauma, it becomes a part of your subconscious and it tries to come back in multiple ways. So in the long run, suppressing grief and trauma is not the best way to deal with it. In the same way, thinking about your grief every single day and not being able to move on with life is not a good idea, because you have to move on with life and there's nothing you can do to change what happened. And thinking about it, dwelling in it, getting angry about it, getting depressed, getting anxious is also not a good way to handle grief and trauma. So how do you process grief and trauma? How do you process grief and trauma? How do you handle it? So how do you process grief and trauma? Take dedicated time every day to sit with your emotions. Feel all the emotions that you feel when you think about the trauma. Don't put it behind. Don't suppress it. Feel the emotions. Let it flow through you. Accept what has happened and accept the emotions behind it. Most importantly, the emotions behind it. Invite God into your grieving process. Ask God to come with you and comfort you during the process. Do not withhold anything you feel. Release all your emotions. Maybe if you want to cry, cry about it. Maybe if you want to just sit and feel the emotions and accept what has happened, do it. However you feel like, release the emotions that comes along with the grief that you have encountered. At this time, your body might have multiple sensations. You might feel like nervous, you might feel jittery, you might feel I can't go through this again. But but trust me, go through it and nothing is going to happen in the end. You would have accepted it. Every day, take some time every day to go through this process, and do not forget to invite God into your grieving process and to surrender your feelings and thoughts into the loving hands of God. And as you go, you will realize that you're able to process the emotions that are associated with grief and trauma more easily. And once the dedicated time for grieving is over, go back to your life and try not to think about what has happened. This will kickstart the healing process in your system. And you will find that in future when you encounter other similar incidents, you will have the strength and courage to handle. And as you go through the grieving process, the wound will become a part of your life and make you stronger, not only emotionally and psychologically. With the help of God, and by accepting all your emotions and feelings and the incident that happened, you will overcome the grief, and you'll become stronger in the long run. God be with you and God bless you.